It was 10 years ago this past September when our first guest, Debbie Zimmerman, stood at regional headquarters to unveil 8 new regional transit buses. It was the first step in realizing a vision she and other councillors had 10 years prior to that to unite the area's 12 municipalities through transportation. Now, another 10 years later, an even bigger step has been taken toward a true regional transit system. Debbie, that vote at Regional Council, only one person dissented. How did that make you feel?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I'm just delighted to see the leadership on Regional Council to move to an integrated, single fare transit system for this region. And like you said, Mike, 10 years ago, when we unveiled the buses, it was a half step for me personally. I had hoped we could have taken it further, but it was the right step at the right time. So this integration between municipal and regional transit is going to be a game changer for this region.
10 years ago, it was announced as a pilot project.
Right.
And in your eyes, how did that pilot project turn out? How did it work?
Well, it worked okay, but I think there was never, unless you have a seamless system for people having to transfer from one transit system to the other, never makes it easy, right? You have to have a different fare box, you're picking up a different route that's not necessarily the best route. So it was a bumpy road, but I think it paved the way for municipalities to see the importance of having a single fare box going forward.
We've seen some arguments for and against it, mostly for it.
Yeah.
But part of the problem that some people are seeing in their support for it is the governance structure. And we're hearing a lot about Mayor Frank Campion from Welland not so happy with the governance structure right now.
That's no different than when we established the Regional Transportation Committee. We called them the big three. It was St. Catharines, Welland, and Niagara Falls.
And fairly enough, they all had their own transit systems that were running quite well.
Right, and so they were looking at it no different than we looked at it when we moved to integrated waste management. They were taking care of all of the waste management, but it was the outlying areas, so they were looking for compensation and control, and they felt they'd put a lot of capital infrastructure into these systems, so there was a way they felt they wanted to get it back for their taxpayers. But I think it was the broader thinking of Regional Council saying, we can manage this and still provide excellent service. So at the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer in Niagara. And if you're living in St. Catharines or living in Grimsby, it doesn't really matter. You're paying either municipally or regionally, but it's still a single taxpayer. So that's, for us, is what we were pushing, saying, you gotta look at it from that perspective. What's the best for the region of Niagara?
For this to move forward, we need the triple majority. So we had step one, which was the region vote. Step two is taking place really right now. So as of the time when you and I are speaking, Fort Erie and Niagara Falls have given their stamp of approval. 10 more municipalities to go.
Right, and I think that's the importance of this, because most municipalities have some type of transit. It's not necessarily as sophisticated as say, the city of Hamilton, but they've had something that they've used. Niagara-on-the-Lake has a system. Grimsby has a system. But I think everybody recognizes it's not going to be the kind of system we need today for our communities. And I think what's important is we're not giving up our community, we're giving up just our oversight over transit, which is probably better at the region. Well, I know it's going to be better run at the region.
Will those 3 big municipalities, Welland, Niagara Falls, and St. Catharines, still have a municipal hub, a hub in their area? That's my question.
I suspect that they may want to. I'm not sure if it will be needed to connect in with a municipal system, but again, you spoke to governance. I would think everybody will want to find the most efficient way to run a system.
We're also seeing major development, West Lincoln, Lincoln. Niagara-on-the-Lake is soon going to develop Glendale, which could add, I think it's up to 10,000 new residents in that particular area. So as these areas become more densely populated, they are going to need transportation out of those areas to where they're going to have to work in the region.
Yeah, and I would note, I think the number, I may have this wrong, but it was Welland was the 15th choice for people in Canada to live. So Welland has amazing things to offer.
Big numbers projected for growth in Welland.
Big number projected. A desirable community. I just hired someone from Welland who came out of the GTA and they've moved here. So take all those opportunities and build something really great for our future. And I think that's what this is about.
When you look at your time as regional chair, which ended in 2003, am I correct?
Yes, and then stayed on as a regional councillor.
But so many regional politicians, so many municipal politicians and mayors over the last 20 years, are you surprised that your vision from way back then is now so close to being realized?
I'm delighted. And I think I would just add to this, there's still one thing I'd like to see, and that's that Mid-Peninsula corridor, that new southern connection highway that we need to develop the south, and take the pressure off the QEW. I'm hoping that's the one thing that we can also see going into the future. But I'm delighted that this council and many of my colleagues that I worked with are still there. So I know that they shared in the same thought process that Niagara needs to do something. And we're one of the few regions that had not taken this step.
When you talk triple majority, really, even though I said we're on stage 2 of the triple majority, stage 2 and 3 are the same.
Much the same.
Because what we're looking at is majority of the 12 municipalities
Exactly.
representing the majority of the population.
Exactly.
Only Waynfleet's mayor voted against the issue at the region. So with them being potentially the only one to dissent against this, that seems almost like a done deal.
Yeah, it is. I would say that there is enough majority of the votes, majority of the population that they represent that should carry the day.
Will you be involved in the implementation? You're not involved in politics anymore, but will you chime in and offer some advice?
You know, there's very capable people around the table. I work with some great general managers from Welland, St. Catharines, all across the region, and Niagara Falls. Wonderful individuals. Some of them have retired, but there's where your talent is, in the staff. You have great talent in those individuals who've been running those transit systems. Tap into them, because they'll help you build a system for the future.
Sitting here in 2021, moving into 2022, this must feel a little bit like pushing your baby out of the nest and watching him or her take flight.
Oh, well, you know, it is a source of pride when you think that we had a council that was so forward-thinking back then, that moved partially to transit, but, you know, there was just not the support to take it to the next step. So, yeah, seeing this idea fly is really, for me, quite humbling at the same time, but just thanking people who are thinking very forward with thinking. Because, you know, most time in politics, things don't necessarily happen when you're in the role. It takes that time, and you can look back and reflect on your career and say, gee, that worked out okay.